Hey guys, welcome back to the Play on Footy channel. Today we're going to be reviewing the round 7 Anzac Day round, and what a round it was. A lot of surprises and not so much surprises, but we'll get into it. First, I just wanted to say that thank you to Hotkey Socials for the podcast I did yesterday. Big shout out to him. Look forward to doing more of that. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, if you like podcasts, go on and check out his channel. My video was on there with him. Okay, so first game of round 7 was on a Wednesday. It was Richmond versus Melbourne. This was at the MCG. For fantasy, we'll kick off with that. The results of that. So Maurice Rioli got an 89, Paddy Dow 88. And Daniel Rioli, the other Rioli, got 87 AFL fantasy. And then we got Maxi Gawn, another big game for him for Melbourne, 134 AFL fantasy. Trent Rivers, 107, and Ed Langdon, 103. What I liked about this game was Maurice Rioli really stood up. He kicked 2 goals, which was really important in some aspects of the game, but ultimately Melbourne just had full control of too much of the game, especially after half-time. They really kicked it off. Gawn really managed to be the king of the hit-outs throughout the night and really gave silver service to Melbourne's mids. Melbourne's backs, so you got Trent Rivers, you got Jakey Lever and Stephen May were just absolute triple threats down there and did so well. Tajwa Woden, he's sort of the new kid on the block, so to speak, did really well in his first full game. Normally he's been the sub. He got 14 disposals and had some nice dashes of brilliance throughout the game. What I disliked, there was a little bit of friction between Dusty and Bailey Fritsch post-game. I'll try and find the video clip, but I might add it to this clip. But yeah, it was interesting. If you're a good lip reader, there was some interesting words exchanged. Tigers of old, I did do a video on Richmond Tigers and how old their list is. There's going to be some massive changes end of this season for Tigers. Whether or not Dusty goes to Gold Coast Suns, what they do with their backs, they've got a really aging list at the moment. And then some new recruits like Naismith really hasn't done much. He certainly didn't do much in this game. So yeah, they'll be disappointed, the Tigers, and Adam Uze has a lot of work to do. On top of that, they've got injury carnage left, right and centre. They've got Hopper that's just been injured again, had a mild hamstring strain, I believe. But yeah, re-injuring hamstrings is not good long term. So hopefully he can recover from that and make an impact. He did have a really good impact on the game, all bar that injury. But hopefully Richmond can do something. But Melbourne, they're plogging along. They have had some scrappy games. This has definitely been one of them for them, but they're heading in the right direction, so to speak, especially on the ladder. The next game was the Bombers versus Pies. This was a drawn Anzac Day game and the biggest game of the round, undoubtedly. For AFL Fantasy, McGrath did really well down back for the Bombers, 123. Zach Merritt, again, stellar game, 123 AFL Fantasy. Nick Martin kicked a goal in the final term. That was amazing, 113 AFL Fantasy. For the Pies, Nick Dacos, 98. Pendlebury, 98, did really well in this game as well. And Myercheck stood up with 85 AFL Fantasy. What I liked about the game was McGrath's defensive pressure and also Noble for standing up. He's been more of a fringe player for the Pies, but he really did well this Anzac Day game, and hopefully he stars in some more games this season because the Pies could really use his dash off halfback, which he did a lot in this game. Martin's goal in the last quarter, that really picked up the Bombers, and unfortunately, I'll get to the dislikes in a sec, but I think Nick Martin, especially previous week against the Power, I think he's been doing really well for the Bombers. And the next one was Elliot Screamer for the Pies. I thought that was amazing. Really reached some new heights, and yeah, really it's a mark of the year contender for sure. What I disliked about the Bombers and Pies game was Langford's miss in the last quarter. He kicked 4 goals up to that sort of last little hurdle and unfortunately pulled the kick to the right. So, yeah, and that ultimately, got the drawn result. The other dislike was Elliott's drop mark. This was also in the last quarter. Again, 2 pivotal moments that were unfortunately missed for both teams. And side bottom, yeah, he had a real lackluster game in this one for the Pies. And obviously, you've got polar opposites, right? You've got Pendlebury, who's getting up there in age. I think he's 36. And Sidebottom, I think, is pretty close to that number as well. But yeah, Sidebottom just looks like he's a little bit past it, to be honest. I hate to say that he's been a great player for the Pies, but yeah, it's not looking good for Sidebottom. Next game was the Giants versus Lions. This was a sort of a following the Anzac Day drawn game. It was a little bit of a lackluster game, and such polar opposites. You're going from the MCG, the epicenter of AFL footy, and then you go into some sort of regional country. It looked like a regional country town, in Canberra for a game that's it's a big Anzac Day game, but it just didn't feel like that from a viewing perspective. So the AFL would want to address that. I don't think it's good to have such polar opposites there. But yeah, so for the Giants, Green, not Toby Green, but the other Green, Tom Green, did 127 AFL fantasy. Kelly did 121 AFL fantasy, and Callahan 108. For the Lions, Josh Dunkley again did really well, 100. McCluggage 95, and Darcy Ford. He's sort of like the backup ruckman for McInerney. He did quite well in this game, 92. What I liked about the game was Green's 37 disposals. Now, he's not the only AFL player to do this. Nat Fyfe did as well this round, but I thought that was really commendable and an amazing sort of achievement. Darcy Jones, the first gamer, he kicked 2 goals. So he's definitely one to watch. They had Brent Daniels out, which sort of paved his way to come in, and obviously Toby Green as well. That's what sort of swung in favour of him to come in. McCluggage for Brisbane, he's just a game in, game out, great sort of supplier for the Lions and uses the ball really well, I thought. And the other one was C. Brown. He was another one that stood up in the absence of Toby Green. And Brent Daniels. He kicked 3 goals, which was really good to see. When he's utilised, he's actually a really good source of forward pressure for the Giants. So I thought that was really good. What I disliked was what is the Lions brand? What is the Brisbane Lions brand? I mean, I can tell you now, I didn't pick Lions to be so low at this stage of the year in post round 7. Hogan went missing. He kicked 1 goal too. And Danaher, same thing, 1 behind. So it wasn't a night for forwards necessarily, with those 2 big key players not really hitting the scoreboard at all. The next game was Port versus Saints. We'll start off with the AFL Fantasy. Wines, 113. Jason Burgoyne, 112. William Drew, 106. For the Saints, Josh Sinclair, 108. Nasiah Wanganeen Miller, 96. And Darcy Wilson, 92. What I liked about the game was Darcy Wilson, last week's rising star, got 21 disposals, kicked 2 behinds, unfortunately couldn't hit the scoreboard, but he is an absolute undeniably good player. Sinclair with 28 disposals and a goal. Jace Burgoyne really stood up. He's a sort of a new sort of player for Port Adelaide, bit of a young gun, and he's going to be a really good player for them. And then Wilkie down back with 9 marks, just unbelievable. What I disliked about this game was Port's injuries. They had Aaliyah, they had Rosie, they had Sam Powell-Pepper with an ACL. So it wasn't a good night for Port Adelaide. Saints, really, from my observations, they need more converters. Wilson's 2 behinds really could have made the difference on the night. Obviously, hindsight's bliss, but yeah, hopefully they can sort of patch it up coming into this week in round 8. And another interesting thing would be Rowan Marshall. He wasn't really impactful. He went off the ground with a suspected PCL that some ruckmen get when they make contact knee to knee. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he gets up this week. Next game is North versus Adelaide. This one was, an interesting game. More so the fact that North, there's no sort of real clear direction, I don't see. And I really wish that North can sort of resurrect themselves and become good under Clarko. But you got to understand, Clarko isn't the be-all and end-all. He's a 4-time premiership coach, yes, and past player. Been in the AFL system for a long time. But, a lot of things prior to Clarko even coming to the club needs or has to be addressed. And one of them is the poor recruiting as well. North can't keep drawing some good mature players. For instance, there's talk of Zerha being traded out at the end of the season to get picks 1 and 2. You know, if you keep doing that, core leadership just deteriorates. So you can't have such a, 50 or 60% young sort of tier group between ages of 18 to 21 and expect them to bring a club forward. You've seen one player do it in particular at the moment is West Coast, Harley Reid. But yeah, I think North really need that top tier leadership at the moment to lead them forward. And unfortunately, I think North's biggest problem at the moment is not having those sort of top tier leaders at the club. Simpkin clearly isn't in the right headspace, obviously since his concussion, so that's a little bit disappointing. But yeah, the likes of Sheasel, week in, week out, he's the clear, breadwinner for North, and ball winner, I should say. And McKerch was another one. So for North, for AFL Fantasy, Sheasel 125, McKerch 109, LDU 98. For Adelaide Crows, it was Dawson 122. He's been up there week in, week out. Laird 121 and Scholl 106. What I liked about the game was McKercher will 100% win the Rising Star nomination this week, without a doubt. He got 30-something disposals, so that was phenomenal. Laird got 34 disposals. Rankin got 4 goals, 1. Zane Dersma is a player to watch for North, and I think he's, with more games under his belt, he get more confidence. He kicked 2 goals, 1. Zerha kicked 3 goals, and he was the absolute shin of spirit out there in that game, without a doubt. So to lose Zerha, to trade him for picks 1 and 2, I don't think, whether he wants to stay or not, he does hail from WA. But yeah, I can tell you now that he's definitely a player you want to keep North, 100%. What I disliked was Fisher. Zach Fisher went missing in action, 10 disposals, and as well as Powell. Tom Powell was missing as well in action. He did kick a goal and a behind, but only managed 10 disposals. Whether his role has changed under Clarko, I'm not too sure, but it's pretty evident he had less of an impact for sure. Next game was Blues versus Cats. Cripps for AFL Fantasy got 117, Mackay 117, Blake Acres 109. For Cats, it was Brian Myers 106, Guthrie 104, and Cameron 101. What I liked in this game was Jeremy Cameron's 5 goals, 1. Unbelievable. He's definitely going to be contending for the Coleman this year. Cripps 29 disposals, 2 goals, phenomenal in the middle. And Wiedering 12 marks down back. That's pretty amazing. So yeah, he definitely held up down there despite getting a cork previously last week. He managed to play a good game. What I disliked was Dempsey went missing in action for the Geelong Cats, only managing 13 disposals, no goals. And Parfitt, normally a big ball winner for Cats, only managed 17 disposals. Cats are still very good. This is another thing I dislike. Cats are still very good after 15 years. So maybe it's the House of Land packages down there in Geelong that are sort of getting some Melbourne players to come home and really enjoying the country lifestyle. But, after 15 years, it's phenomenal effort for Geelong to be such a consistent team and continually, putting their best foot forward and recruiting relatively well, I think, as well. It comes down to recruitment 100%. Whoever's recruiting for Geelong has been doing an amazing job. So I think that's also comes down to that as well. I was talking on the podcast yesterday with Hotkey, and he asked me who would be making the grand final, and I said first and foremost Greater Western Sydney. They're my second favourite team behind the West Coast Eagles, but then the other team I suspect at the moment, undeniably, with 7 wins, is the Cats to make the grand final. And at the moment, there are talks that it's only 3 teams that could win the grand final. It's the Cats, it's the Giants, and it's Sydney. Obviously, this week, round 8's the Derby, or Derby, as they say over there, and Sydney versus GWS. It's going to be a cracking game. The next game was Freo versus Bullies. This was Perth Optus Stadium, Saturday night game for AFL Fantasy. Aish got 118, Vintage Fife 118 AFL Fantasy, Sarong 107, and for the Bullies, it was Tim English 141, dominated in the ruck against Big Das. And Bailey Dale got 134 AFL Fantasy, as well as the Bont 96. What I really liked was Darcy for the Bulldogs kicking 3 goals. It was phenomenal. I think he's one that's eventually going to get a Rising Star nomination because he's been really good up forward for the Doggies. Vintage Fife 37 disposals, 1 goal, absolutely phenomenal. And Bailey Dale in cracking form really since being dropped by Bevo. He got 30 disposals, 2 goals, so that's pretty phenomenal. What I disliked, and I really don't know the logic here by Bevo, what's going to happen, but Rory Lobb missing in action. Now that they've got Darcy for the Bulldogs, I don't see where Rory Lobb really sits. He's probably going to be looking for another AFL, his 4th AFL club. By the end of the year, 100%. He's not going to play VFL, is he, with that TikTok he made with his Lexi, his girlfriend. So, yeah, no, he's going to be looking for another club. Harms, VFL at best for Bulldogs. I just don't know where he sits as well. And again, the recruitment for Bulldogs is just sort of weird. So, yeah, he'd be one. I think they'll be moving on at the end of the year, Lobb and Harms. And O'Meara for the Dockers. I don't understand where he sits. So he's definitely past his prime. I think he's been a loyal servant for the Dockers and obviously the Hawks, but yeah, he's past his prime at the moment as well. But overall, good game by the Dockers. I think they really stuck into the Bulldogs and showed really great grit and really bounced back after last week's loss against the Eagles in Derby 58. The next game was the Coast Wars, Coast versus Coast, Suns versus the Eagles. And for the Suns, for AFL Fantasy, Witts, 135, really dominated in the ruck in this game. Rao did really well with center clearances, 122, and Flanders, 112 AFL Fantasy. For the Eagles, it was Duggan down back, 103, Petruccelli, 98 AFL Fantasy, and the G-Train Waterman, 92 AFL Fantasy. Fantastic. What I liked about this game was Jared Witts, 46 hit-outs, phenomenal. Dominated Bailey Williams, who just needs more help in the ruck. You've also got Jack Williams there that sort of came in as well to help him out, but he's no ruckman, so they really need Matt Flynn back ASAP. Rao and Anderson dominated with 2 goals each for the Suns, and Waterman kicking 4 goals in fine form, replacing obviously Oscar Allen, who's been out, doing really well. So it's going to be tough for Oscar Allen to come back, I think, with Waterman in such fine form. What I disliked was Eagles have too many passengers. So they've got Hunt, they've got Brockman, they've got Luke Edwards, they've got Sheed, and they've got even Jinby. I know he's a new player, he's finding his feet. They're all passengers in this game. They really weren't as strong as what I'm sure Simo would want them to be. Bailey Williams, as I said earlier, needs Flynn back ASAP. It needs a proper backup ruckman that would free up Williams to go forward and potentially, remove Darling, who, he kicked 2 goals on the weekend, but I think there just needs to be a big change up in the Eagles forward line at the moment. And the loss, unfortunately, reconfirms for many who thought no Reid, no Eagles. And that's apparent in this loss. I think the Eagles plan to take him out of this game to try and prove that they could sustain a winning culture and back up their last 2 wins without Reid. But it was clearly evident that, those two wins that Eagles have been directly from the impact of Harley Reid. So that was a big misfortune out of this game. I think Eagles really held it to them. It was in that last sort of 5 minutes or so of the final quarter that the Suns just kept pushing away and the Eagles couldn't keep up. So, but all in all, I think it was more of a competitive hit out by the Eagles, but having Harley Reid next week against the Bombers will be essential if we to be a bit more competitive, especially with a strong Bombers outfit, which they are this year for sure. Then the final game of the round, it was the Hawks versus the Swans. It was at the MCG. For AFL Fantasy, we had Moore with 114, Newcombe with 89, and Scrimshaw with 87. For the Swans, it was Blakey down back, did phenomenal work, 132, best player on the ground by far. Florent, 131. Lloyd, 126 AFL Fantasy. What I liked was Blakey, 30 disposals and 12 marks. Absolutely phenomenal of halfback there for the Swannies. And McDonald, in the absence of Buddy Franklin this year, is doing great guns. 3 goals, 3, had plenty of the ball, so not a bad result in the end. And Heaney, just doing Heaney things, 3 goals, 21 disposals. So yeah, he obviously is doing the best he can for the Swans, and they clearly ran out the winners against this game. What I disliked about it was Gunston, Jack Gunston, seeing a past Hawks dynasty member. He's way past his prime. He probably will not be getting another contract by the end of this year. Ginnivan, 4 behinds, way off his best. I think that's what happens, the constant media attention and the tall poppy syndrome that's in Australia at the moment, whether it's getting to his head at the moment. He clearly wasn't at his best that game. And Chol, the new recruit from the Suns, just missing in action. So yeah, a lot of their recruits that the Hawks have had, if you're talking about inspired lists, I'd say North Melbourne have a more inspiring list at the moment than the Hawks do. And if I was Sam Mitchell, as much as I respect the guy, he played for the Eagles in 2017. He was one of our midfield coaches in 2018 when we won the grand final. I would be very worried, not so much for Clarko. I'd be more worried about Sam Mitchell at the Hawks. He has a monster rebuild ahead of him, and it's only going to get harder with the addition of the Tasmanian Devils in 2028. I just think it's already been harder for many teams with the Gold Coast Suns and GWS Giants. But yeah, if there's one team to watch and to sort of sympathise, if you have any sympathy at all, would be with Sam Mitchell for the Hawks. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Thanks again to Hotkey Socials for the podcast yesterday. If you want to go and check it out, check out his channel. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.